What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some important things that Donald Trump said that caused the market to get a very, very big rug pull. I'm going to talk about what data is coming out for tomorrow that's very important, and what you should be watching for on the charts moving forward. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about the market. So the market is selling off like crazy, right? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 red days in a row, and there's no sign of a bottom yet. However, we did fill this gap over here. That's a very, very good sign. And typically when you fill a gap like that, you do tend to see some kind of like reaction. There's many examples of that happening. So for example, when we had we had this gap right over here to fill. SPY filled the gap and then we bounced. And there's some instances where that tends to happen. Now, it's very rare for SPY to dump this hard without much of a bounce, but we have to be very careful because right now there's no sign of a bounce yet. So we have to be very careful with how we play this. The last 6 days were crazy. SPY basically pumped in the morning, then dumped, pumped in the morning, then dumped, pumped in the morning, then dumped, pumped in the morning, dumped, pumped in the morning, then dumped every single day for the last 6 days. Okay. Why did this happen? What's going on? One of the things that led the market was Nvda. Nvda was trying to bounce today, but then we got, whoops, sorry about that, guys. What basically happened was we tried to bounce, then we got this big sell-off on Nvda. It's very unfortunate. It really wanted to bounce, but it wasn't really enough. Earnings were good for them, but it wasn't really enough to get the share price up, and we still saw this big rug pull. So what does this mean for the market now that Nvda got this big sell-off and the market's selling off like this? Well, it all came because of some very, very big news. The first thing you have to remember is that there's a lot of fear right now, right? We're seeing big tech stocks selling off. We're seeing the majority of stocks in the red. Tesla is dumping with their sales dumping. And also just know that finance is kind of flat with Berkshire Hathaway leading the way. But the majority of stocks are still in the red, especially our ETFs and futures. So tomorrow we have PCE data. We'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. But why did we get such a monstrous sell-off? Why is the market dumping like this? And the reason is because of one word, tariffs. That's one of the big factors, right? There's fear about the economy. There was bad data involving business activity. There's all these factors, but one of the big ones is tariffs. Donald Trump said a lot of things about tariffs over the last couple of days. Let's read his quotes. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "The decision on tariffs in the EU is 25%. Details on the EU tariffs are coming very soon. The EU can try to retaliate on tariffs, and the EU has to be at 25% on autos and other things." Then Donald Trump said that the US will invest in China. China won't be able to take advantage of the US anymore. Our relationship is a very good one, but the tariffs will still go on. Not all of them, but a lot of them. There's no stopping the tariffs. They're going to happen, and we're going to still have a good relationship with many different countries. So that's what Donald Trump said yesterday. There's even more things that came out. But honestly, guys, he keeps on screaming more and more tariffs. More tariffs are coming. So the first thing worth mentioning is that Donald Trump said on Thursday that the tariffs on goods from Canada and Mexico will increase sharply on March 4th. And on top of that, he's now announcing an additional 10% tariffs on Chinese goods. So he wants to increase tariffs more on China, and he wants to basically continue to give us higher tariffs for Canada and Mexico. So that's the plan he has. This is not just negotiation now. He wants to actually do it. He also mentioned that this is his way of dealing with the bigger problem, and also for fairness. That is what his perspective happens to be. Now, I'm sure you guys already knew about this. I did talk about this many times already, so I'm not going to go over the full details. But now he announced something else that's very, very big. Donald Trump wants to impose 25% tariffs on goods from the European Union. That may cause retaliatory actions by the EU from the group's 27 members. But for now, this is once again going to cause a big disruption. So that's what Donald Trump is saying. Donald Trump said that the EU was created to screw over the USA. He said that the EU has taken advantage of the US, adding that they don't accept our cars, they don't accept essentially our farm products, and we accept everything from them. That's what Donald Trump said. He's continuing to threaten more tariffs as a result. Once again, it's very important to remember who this is going to be affecting. So this is going to cause this is going to be causing a very, very big disruption. Why is that? Well, you have to remember that his Canadian tariffs affect oil, petroleum, and factors like that. Lots and lots of goods, hundreds of billions of dollars worth. The Mexican tariffs are going to be affecting automakers, manufacturing, and then food prices to some extent. And then the Chinese ones affect manufacturing, a bunch of different products. And now we have the European ones. Now the European ones are coming. So what does this mean? Products that could be affected according to the global stats database include mechanical appliances and electrical equipment, pharmaceutical products, vehicles and aircraft, optical instruments, many agricultural food products such as like wines, spirits, liquors, processed cereals, breakfast cereals or pastas, other processed foods, beer and cider, dairy products, organic chemicals, oil, gas, and coal, and the list goes on. So this is going to be affecting close to about $600+ billion worth of products. I think another study found that $600+ billion worth of products coming to the US are going to be affected by these tariffs, apparently. That is very extreme. And Donald Trump is saying very soon, he said, and I quote, very soon, these tariffs are going to be coming on Europe. So that's very, very important. We'll have to see how things end up going. He did say that the European Union's tariffs could be coming very soon. Some sources are saying that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico could be postponed until like April 2nd, but that's not guaranteed. I didn't hear Donald Trump actually say that officially. So we can't really uh, confirm that yet, right? For now, the main date is going to be March 4th, and I'll give you guys any update if that changes. But nonetheless, he's very fixated on the tariffs. He keeps saying they're going to be coming. Now Europe is coming into the picture. So that's pretty big. There's other things Donald Trump has been saying. So he's saying that he wants the tariffs to be on cars and all other things. And then Donald Trump also said that the tariffs are going to be including pharmaceuticals and then possibly semiconductors. Now, he hasn't talked as much about semiconductors recently. He's more focused on just like Europe and on China, Mexico, and Canada. But that could be another big one. So please keep that in mind. As a result, there's a lot of fear right now. The fear and greed index is going crazy. There's extreme fear. People are just kind of like panicking, worried about what Donald Trump is about to say. Momentum remains at extreme fear right now as well. The put to call option ratio is at extreme fear. We're just seeing fear all over the place. People are beginning to panic. So with the VIX taking off, with all this fear, the market remains bearish. We'll see if we try to hold this next support, but we're not looking that great. So why is the market dipping upon tariffs? Just as a quick reminder, okay? There's going to be negative short-term consequences. It's going to be negative for our GDP for the short term. Short term being the next like 3 to 6 months. I think this is going to have a big effect on us once they're imposed. They haven't even been imposed yet. We're just talking about them. The tariffs aren't even imposed yet. So this is going to be affecting us for many months. It's going to be causing higher inflation because this adds to a costs on consumers. You have to think about that. And then also at the same time, you have to think how this is going to be affecting consumer behavior, right? When people suspect prices will be going up, they could start to, demand starts to go up for particular products quicker. This could cause big disruptions. Another example is look at what's happening with eggs, right? We saw supply chains being disrupted by the bird flu. And, there's also other factors. And then as a result, people are hoarding these eggs. There's low supply of them and the prices are just skyrocketing. So that's going to be happening to a lot of products. Another issue is that other countries may not want to trade as much with the US. They may not want to. They're de-incentivized to do that, or they could be retaliating with higher tariffs back on the US, causing prices to go up on both sides, right? That's another con of this, thus hurting businesses and causing more bankruptcies. Businesses are incentivized now to try to produce goods in the US, but that's not going to happen immediately, right? Labor is more expensive here. And then if you look at products like iPhones, if you're looking at certain cars, we don't produce everything in the US, okay? We don't have the alternative right now, which is why prices will go up, at least to some extent. Maybe in the future we could get there, but it's going to take a while. You have to keep that in mind. And then once again, other countries have cheaper labor that really benefit the US. It's not going to be the same. Now, what is Donald Trump's plan? He's saying that this is for fairness. This is debatable whether you agree with this or not. There are large trade deficits that do exist, but Donald Trump thinks this is necessary. What I would argue that you have to remember is that we benefit from low tariffs already. But if he wants to increase them, if he believes it's for fairness, that is one argument you can make. So that is one of the pros, technically, at least from his perspective. Could this be used for negotiation? Sure. In this case, he doesn't look like he's trying to negotiate as much more with like Canada and Mexico. It looks like he just wants to impose the tariffs. And then he wants to increase government revenue. That's the big thing. It's estimated that the government could be making, trillions of dollars over the next 4 years once these tariffs are imposed. With that extra revenue, if the government makes trillions, can they invest trillions back into the U.S. to offset the negative GDP, the higher inflation? Can they do that, or will it just not work out? I don't know, guys. We'll have to wait and see on this. But that is what Donald Trump's argument is. So whether you agree with this or not, it's your choice. I respect that. I'm just trying to be very, very unbiased by naming the pros and cons. Keep in mind that this is all very important and the tariffs aren't even like officially imposed yet. You have to think about that. They haven't been imposed yet on Mexico and Canada. We're still waiting for those. We're still waiting for the European ones. And then in the future, with semiconductors and other products Donald Trump has been talking about, he has been implying that Thailand, India, Taiwan, Vietnam, Japan, and Malaysia could also be affected as well. He's prioritizing the top trade partners. So you basically have Mexico, Canada, and China as the top ones. Then you have many European countries. When you include the EU, it includes a bunch of European countries at once. So when you combine them, that's going to be like one of the biggest trade partners. Then you have like Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam. So that's what Donald Trump is thinking. Anyways, so enough about that. All this tariff talk is causing lots of fear. What affects the market for tomorrow? There is one more very important thing I want to talk about, and I'll talk about the charts. Tomorrow is Friday, February 28th. Tomorrow, 1 hour before the stock market opens at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the PCE data report coming out. So what is PCE? This is another version of CPI that the Fed uses for their studies. The Fed prioritizes this, so it's going to be very important. We're expecting inflation tomorrow. So for core PCE, keep in mind we're expecting year over year for this to be at 2.6 to 2.7%, a slight decrease. I don't know if that's very probable because when CPI came out on the core side, let me just show you the charts. CPI went up for January. Guys, check out the charts. CPI went up already. There's a good chance that PCE might go up as well. So PCE might not be the best. Okay. That's not a good piece of news. We'll have to see how the market responds to that, but I'm a little bit apprehensive about this. PCE is coming out. Core PCE is going to likely be hot. Core PCE month over month is going to be expected to be at 0.3 to 0.4%. It could be aligned with expectations. That's a slight increase compared to before, anyways. And then for all items PCE month over month, we're expecting 0.3 to 0.4%, a slight increase. And then we're expecting about the same PCE year over year. Unfortunately, CPI was hot, and there's a chance that PCE is going to be either as expected or above expectations. Not the best of news. That's a sign inflation's already starting to go up. So that's very, very big news, guys. Please keep that in mind. What do I see for the market from this point on? You have to watch the levels at this point because the market is continuing to fall with no bottom in sight. We're watching this support right here. It's actually quite simple. Watch 585 on SPY. We need to hold this. If we lose this, I think we jump to 580, then 575. We have this blue trend line. This is previous resistance becoming support. If we get a big dump, we'll have to see if that holds us. Right now, that would be near like 575. On top of this, we have this trend line right here. Let me just double check this. Actually, I think we're a little bit below this, but just to be very, very much safe, we'll have to be watching it like this to see if this will be acting as our next support. This is going to be like another support to watch for on SPY. But I'm going to be watching this very, very closely. So basically on SPY, we have two supports. We're watching 585. For the last couple of days, we gap up and dump, gap up on dump. That's what we've been doing. I am a little bit apprehensive because PCE is what's going to be affecting this, the inflationary numbers, and they may be a little hot tomorrow. So I want to be very careful. If we gap up tomorrow like this, I think there's a good chance we try to do that. We might get a negative reaction because of a hot PCE data, and I wouldn't rule out the possibility of us dumping all the way down to 580. If we hold 585, you want to get back above like 589 to 590, then we could bounce. But as long as we're below like 589 to 590, we are still looking a bit more bearish. I think we gap up and dump. That's what we did for the last 6 days. That is the most likely possibility. Despite how many options expire tomorrow, we have a 2.62 put to call ratio. But a pump in the morning than a dump is very probable. I'm a little bit concerned for the people who are trying to say, yes, we're going to bounce this and that, because I'm apprehensive with this inflationary data because the last time CPI came out, it was hot. And PCE might be hot as well. So I want to be very, very careful. That's my warning for everyone. For the QQQ, we're on a downtrend, right? We basically pumped and dumped and pumped and dumped, pumped and dumped, pumped and dumped, pumped and dumped 6 days in a row as well. I also want to call out that when you go to the daily time frame, we haven't filled our gap yet. There's a giant gap over here to fill at 492. So there's a risk we might be dumping even more. The most likely possibility, at least based off the last 6 days, we just pump and dump like there's no tomorrow, is if we do see some kind of pump because we're at the 500 support right here, we push a couple of points, then we continue to fall all the way down to like 492. If we lose 500, I'm looking for 492. If we get back up at 506, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 510. We could go either way, but a pump and dump is very probable. We could kind of push and start dipping to fill this gap. That is very probable, especially as we have a gap to fill, so please be very careful. The daily chart is looking weak right now, and there's no sign of a bounce, so we do favor kind of like a pump and dump. But this depends on the PCE data report, so we'll see just to be safe. For now, the chart remains bearish with no bounce in sight yet. So we'll see when we bounce. For now, we look bearish. I'm not too happy about the QQQ and also the Russell 2000. We have a left shoulder headed in the right shoulder that's forming. I'm going to be eyeing a lot of these gaps. I think I saw quite a few, but the thing is, we're still bearish. We want to see this thing reclaim 215 to bounce. If not, we could be dipping towards 210, then 208. We could test 214. And if we reject again, we're going to be looking for more downside towards 210. We're just dumping like there's no tomorrow. And that's about like almost 6 days in a row. I think 6 days in a row, we're just dumping. So there's no sign of a bounce yet, and we still look more bearish. ES needs to reclaim 59.25. I want to see us reclaim that to bounce. If we kind of push and reject, we're going to be looking for a move back down towards 58.25. So we'll see how that goes. Overall, we're looking a bit more bearish. The daily chart's making, we have 6 rejections in a row, making lower highs and lower lows. We could push and start dipping all the way down. I'm going to be eyeing the daily 200 EMA at 58.24. We could be dipping even more to kind of pump and dump again. And that could be the main support, which is where we see some buyers step in. We did bounce off the 5,800 area many times historically, so I want to be very careful there. We look weak right now. There's no sign of a bounce. We still favor downside. We'll see if we get some kind of rebound move close to like the 5,900s. Then we'll see if we reject as the most likely possibility. If we hold above 5,900, we could bounce there. If we touch 5,900 and reject, I'm looking for a move all the way down towards 58.25. So look for a test close to 5,900. If we reject there, we could be continuing to fall back down to where the support is, which would align with this trend line, at least to some extent. We could be looking for a move like this as the most likely case. For NQ, we're not looking too good. We're continuing to fall. There's no sign of a bounce quite yet on NQ. We're looking at the support at 20,620. That's our 200 EMA. So we could see a small rebound here by about 100 points or so before it starts to dump again. It's about 20,500. That's where we have this imbalance. So it still looks kind of weak. We're making lower highs and lower lows, so please be very, very careful. For Bitcoin, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now. We have a double top and a big rejection. I also want to add that we have this resistance around this 75,000 area. So I could be looking for Bitcoin to dip towards that. We might rebound to test our 200 EMA as it's acting as a magnet for 85,000. But if we don't hold above this, it could just be a temporary push before this thing starts to decline all the way down towards the 80,000 mark. It still looks very, very weak. For Nvda, we tried to bounce. I wanted to see us break this trend line to turn bullish. We came short. We were not able to do that. We got a big rejection. So now we're looking bearish. Earnings came out. It wasn't really enough to get this to bounce. And I just want to call out that we have this gap over here. We're going to be looking to see if we could hold above 121. That's our 200 EMA. If not, we're going to likely continue to fall for like this 117-ish zone and eventually 115. So we'll see how it goes. If we get some kind of rebound move before it starts to dump all the way down towards like 117 or below, keep that in mind, please. Unfortunately for Tesla, we're looking more bearish. We have this gap all the way down here to fill all the way down towards 250. We also have this resistance at 275. So watch those two supports. No sign of a bounce on Tesla. Could we rebound a tiny bit? Sure, but we're going to likely continue to dump. For us to rebound, you want to reclaim 302.08 or 200 EMA. No sign of that. So I think we fill the gap to 250 and we continue to dump. Unless we end up reclaiming 302, we still favor downside. For other factors out there, we have Apple. Apple's looking bearish. We're below 238. If that fails us, we could be dipping towards 232. If we reclaim 240, we could try to bounce, but we look bearish on the daily. This is a big rejection on Apple. So unfortunately, we are looking a little bit weaker. So there's a good chance that things may continue to dip. We have some bad news involving iPhone demand that came out. So I think that 231 becomes possible if we end up losing 235, and we could be testing those levels. Unless we get back above 242, we still favor downside. So keep that in mind. For Netflix, the chart looks like it has a head and shoulders. We're looking at support at 951. I do think we're going to be testing that. If that fails us, there's this big gap over here. We could be looking for a bigger tip to the low 900s. I think we test 951 though, and we'll see how we end up reacting. For MSTR, we're on a bit of a downtrend. We're looking at this support around 250. We're continuing to fall, so keep that in mind. We have 218 as a big support. We need to reclaim 250. Otherwise, we could continue to fall towards 220 or basically 230. So it still looks kind of weaker. For Celsius, we gapped up and we're just rejecting. We came down to fill the gap exactly as predicted. There's another gap to fill down here at 22. Watch for a test of 25.8. We'll see if we rebound first before it continues to dump. Otherwise, we favor downside for 24 and eventually 22.8. For Supermicro, we're looking bearish. We've already dumped quite a bit. It's not looking too good. I'm going to be looking for 39.5 to be tested. We also have a gap down here to fill around 35, so I favor downside. Palantir is dumping. It's very, very weak. We could continue to fall back down towards the support at 78 to 80. We need to reclaim 87 and then 90 to bounce. Otherwise, we favor downside for the low 80s. For Rivian, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now. We're looking very, very weak. We could be looking for a move back down. If 11.4 fails us, I could be looking for a move back down for 11. So we're still looking a bit more bearish, unfortunately. For SoFi, we're rejecting. We're making lower highs and lower lows. We could be dipping back down towards 13.5. So I do think we favor downside a little bit more as well. AMD is getting lots of rejections right here. We could be dipping back down towards the 96 area. We're not able to hold 100, so it still looks a bit more bearish. ARM is making lower highs as well. We were not able to hold above 135, so we favor a move to fill this gap all the way down towards 128. For Coinbase, we're rejecting right here. Unfortunately, we have a big gap here, so let's just ignore all these supports. There's a gap to fill at 193. We need to hold above 218 to bounce. If we don't get back above 218, we're favoring that gap fill for 194. Amazon has a lot of gaps to fill in the 190s. However, I'm going to be watching this support where this wick is at 204. We need to reclaim 215 to bounce. Otherwise, we're favoring 204 or below, then eventually 201. Still looks a bit more bearish. Meta is barely holding support at 657. If 657 fails, I think we could be testing previous resistance becoming support at 635. Unfortunately, we look bearish. I want to see us reclaim 683 to bounce. We tried to bounce and we rejected, so it's not a good sign. Microsoft is rejecting over and over again. Going back to the charts, I'm not seeing too many gaps, but I do want to mention that we have the support over here around 390 then 386, so we could be testing those supports. We're still looking very, very heavy. Google is rejecting. We're not able to hold above 175, so we're favoring a move all the way down towards 166 if 170 fails us. And then we also have a lot of gaps in the 150s, so I'm going to be very cautious with this stock. Looks bearish so far. GameStop is looking dippy. We're looking for 23.5. AMC could be dipping towards $3 flat. DJT could be dipping as well to fill this gap towards the 18s. The VIX is looking bullish. If we break past 22, we're looking for a bigger rebound for like 24.5. There's no sign of a rejection on the VIX, at least so far. We'll see how this holds up tomorrow. The 10-year is dipping, not really affecting us. The dollar is starting to run. If we break past 107.35, we're looking for a bounce on it. It's looking a bit more bullish. That's not a good sign for the markets. So, yes, we're at support on SPY. We should try to gap up tomorrow. There might be an attempt to do so, but the chart remains bearish. Every day for the last 6 days, we gap up and dump, gap up and dump, gap up and dump over and over again. And the tariffs haven't even been imposed yet. Donald Trump is just talking about them, right? We haven't even gotten the latest too many inflationary numbers. We just got a couple of hot ones, and there's so much more to come. So we're just getting started with, some economic downturn catalysts from not so good inflation to factors like that. It's just getting started, and the market already looks bearish. So we'll see if we gap up tomorrow. I think that's very probable, but that's going to depend on our PCE data. So we'll see how that ends up looking. Like, it's inflationary numbers. I can't predict it, but the last time CPI came out, it was hot, and there's a good chance PCE will be hot because of that. So we are not looking the best, in my opinion. I thank you all for listening. I wish you all the best no matter what. Let's see if we gap up tomorrow and get another rug pull. Make sure you watch that 585 support and SPY and see if it holds. If not, I could be looking for us to get very close to 580. I thank you for listening. Have a good one. Have a good night, guys. I'll be back tomorrow before market open. I really appreciate you guys for your attentions. I'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening, and peace out.